So my question is about employability and how it fits in with career learning.
Well, in fact, employability, I think to some extent, is probably a current term being used for what we would recognise as careers education, because employability is really an individual's capacity to secure a job, to work well in that job, but then to be able to sustain future jobs and careers. So it's not just about getting one job. It's actually about lifelong jobbing, in a sense, and therefore, because it's kind of a process that goes on and through one's life, and may include times of not being in employment, and or being underemployed, so kind of working below the level at which you are capable of working. So because it's a process and a lifelong process, and it's about securing and sustaining, and therefore has a sense of developmental developing potential in it, that sits it firmly within education, because it's about learning. So it's about individual learning in a work context, but we can kind of come back to that. So employability is career learning for me.
It's just slightly rebranded or modernised or an HE specific?
Yes, well, I think employability is pretty HE specific, actually, and certainly when you look at what employability means, and it is part of employability is learning behaviours that are the behaviours prized by employers, and learning attitudes. So what I mean by that is things like attitudes such as turning up on time, being reliable, taking responsibility for the work that you're doing and for your own learning within work, problem solving, team playing, and so on and so on and so on, and also often there's a kind of attitudes like a can-do attitude, so a preparedness to go forward even when there are obstacles, not necessarily finding an immediate answer, but kind of reflecting and thinking and seeing, you know, how you get around problems in the workplace. So employability, I think, is kind of this catch-all term for attitudes, but also for skills and knowledge, which we would always have included in as being part of becoming a graduate, certainly in terms of graduate employability. And I think it's just been quite a useful shorthand for bringing together things like attitudes, behaviours, skills, know-how, competencies, and it's just a very convenient umbrella term, which is prevalent in higher education. There's no doubt about that. There is an employability agenda.
Do you think there's anything intrinsic about employability that means it can only apply within HE, or is that just just the way it's emerged?
No, I think that's just the way it's emerged, and certainly some of the work that I've done with the BBC Lab UK on developing a psychometric, the Transferable Employability Skills Scale, or TESS, that was very much about helping in response to youth unemployment, and there was an increasing concern about increasing youth unemployment. And one of the things that I was very keen to do was to develop an instrument that would work for, broadly speaking, young people, but not necessarily confined to young people, but that would work no matter what educational level you are, so whether it's graduate, you know, right down to sort of compulsory schooling, and even people that the school system has failed, who perhaps haven't got, you know, a strong basis, you know, which is typically 5 A to C, GCSEs grades A to C or above or equivalent. So it was transferable skills which make up employability, go across all kind of levels of academic achievement, but they also go across different occupational sectors and industrial sectors, so finance, banking, science, services to people, but you need those transferable skills, and you need particular skills and knowledge as well that is sector specific. But no, it really isn't just about graduate employability.
Okay. One thing that sometimes comes up in the literature when people write the sort of careers literature about employability is that there is a complaint that it's not sufficiently linked to the theories that underpin careers and career learning. And I just wondered if you had any thoughts on that.
So I think you're asking me why there isn't an explicit link to career theory in the literature on employability.
Yeah, I suppose why there isn't, and is there an implicit one? Or...
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I don't think it is labelled career learning theory, but I think when it talks about skills acquisition, that is career learning.
Okay.
So I think it's partly a problem of nomenclature, that the same concepts are labelled differently by different disciplines.
Yeah.
So I think there's that. But I think also it's possible that a lot of the employability literature has come out of people teaching a specific discipline. So they're teaching chemistry undergraduates or STEM undergraduate students in all the science, technology, engineering and maths disciplines. And they're coming at it from a discipline-specific point of view, overlaid them with a pedagogic, because they're teaching in higher education, point of view about how students learn their discipline, then how students take that learning and use that learning to move from, let's say, chemistry undergraduate degree to being a retail manager for enterprise rent-a-car. Which is a not untypical progression. As we know, most graduates do jobs which don't specify their own discipline. The majority of graduate jobs don't specify a particular discipline. And so I think the people who've come into employability, particularly graduate employability, have not come from a careers learning or careers education background. So they may be blissfully unaware of the theories of career learning which exist and which are used. And which, I think it's fair to say a lot of career learning was kind of embedded, and the classic, some of the work of Tony Watts, I know, and Bill Law, who are, seminal work that Bill and Tony did, and I know you're going to be talking to them as well. A lot of that work was, that work about developing career learning was embedded in compulsory schooling, so by definition it was up to the then school leaving age of 16, and pretty much at secondary, so from age 11 to about 16, although I know Bill's done some work kind of lower down at primary, and of course, there's no reason why adults shouldn't come back and learn and pick up in that whole thing about lifelong learning and lifelong career learning. But originally it was more in the secondary school age range, I think.
So it's kind of different histories.
Yes.
Perhaps leading to the same point, but using different language.
Okay,
absolutely.
As career practitioners and career researchers, you and I can and should look at theory that serves our research question. So if it's an economic theory, I've got no problem with using economic theory of labour market, for example, or using psychological theory of, self and other, or using sociological theory of, constructs of what we think is a suitable job for a girl, or, whatever it might be. I don't have a problem. Theory is there to serve me and my research, and therefore me and my students, me and my peers in the community of practice, and ultimately our clients. Where the theory comes from is immaterial. It's the utility of the theory in illuminating the question that's under inquiry.
So the question we should be asking is this useful?
Yes.
Okay.
That's a very good question.
Now, one of my other sort of areas of uncertainty, perhaps, about employability is that, and I don't know if this is employability in theory or employability in practice, but it often seems to presuppose that people know where they want to go.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you know, so it's about skills. It's a lot about CVs and the transition skills,
Yes.
and it's about how you behave when you've got the job at work
Yeah,
to make sure
yeah.
you're employable. But what about the frankly most of us who during our university undergraduate degrees don't know where we want to
Yeah.
go, and how
Yeah.
well does employability serve
Yes.
that bunch of people?
Yeah. Well, I suppose that almost comes back to kind of a psychological a psychological approach to working out who I am, what my values are, what kind of future I see myself having. You know, there's a social construct theory, there's sociological theory about what kind of job and occupational persona my family expect me to have. The thing is, at some point, you do have to learn how to apply for a job. At some point, there is, it's actually very important to have those techniques. And certainly in Brilliant Graduate Career Handbook, that was something we simply had to include. We had to include stuff about how you apply, how you write a CV, how you go for an interview, how you tackle aptitude tests, how you get through psychometrics, how you manage all that business of applying for multiple jobs, and how you manage doing that while you're studying and trying to achieve a good degree. So you do need the mechanics, and I don't want to denigrate in any way by calling them mechanics. Mechanics is what makes the world go round. So you need those kind of mechanics, and you need those techniques, as a basis. But you also need this time of learning, broadly speaking, about self and opportunities, which is, at the core of career learning. And also, it's at the core of economic labour market. There's demand out there for, employers are demand in that they're demanding that people are available to do work, and I, as an undergraduate, am the supply, looking to see if I could fit their demands, if that would kind of work together. I think I've slightly lost the thread.
Well, I suppose I'm wondering,
Sorry.
so we're talking about how people decide what's the right.
Yes, yeah.
And, it is at the core of career learning, and it's in the core of, what we're here for.
Yeah.
Is it at the core of employability?
Well, I don't think it has to be. You can't get to filling in a CV unless, or filling in an application form, unless you kind of thought about whether that job would work for you. I think the important thing is there's not the job. It's not like,
Yeah.
the right job or the perfect job. And I think that's quite important, that it's okay to take a job and grow out of it. I did some fascinating work with Learn Direct some years ago, getting people to tell their career stories, and there were two that really stuck out. Someone who was working in advertising as a brand account manager, and so basically his job was to kind of wine and dine and socialise and entertain clients, and so he was going out to, I don't know, race courses and big football matches and wonderful meals and so on. So that was great, that was fine, until he had a family. And as soon as he'd got a family, he didn't want to be out, quaffing champagne and, just sort of staying up till 3 a.m. He wanted to get back for bath time. And that's, that, of course, is psychological theory of development and life stage, and all the work that SUPER's done, and to some extent, CVCAS and the School of CVCAS and life design, and how we make choices that kind of work for us at the phase that we are in our life and what's important to us at that time. So, I think it's not like the old matching paradigm that you choose the right job and you stick with that job come what may. And to be honest, it's just as well, because in the current economic labour market, we're going to be working for, and I use we advisedly, I'm going to be working longer than my sister, who is 3.5 years older than me, and not as long as my sister, who's 9 years younger than me. You know, we are having to face the fact that we are going to be working longer. We're going to be making different choices about our lives. At no point ever in my wildest career thinking did I think that I would be an Associate Dean of Psychology and a Professor of Career Guidance. And yet here I am through a set of opportunities and possibilities and recalibrating and rethinking myself. So, you know, the idea that you've got to get it right and that you will make one decision, get one job, and that'll be it for life.
Just not there anymore.
No.
Okay.
Which is very liberating, as well as being a bit frightening.
There's one sort of final area I want to ask you about, Rachel, which is about the media that we deliver this career learning or employability through. And so on this module, we're particularly looking at group delivery and online delivery.
Yes.
And the sort of tradition has always been that career learning is done through groups, and then when you've done your career learning, then you go for a one-to-one.
Yes. Yeah.
And I just wondered if you had any thoughts about, you know, one-to-one, groups, online. You know, is something better suited to something and something to something else, or? Well,
I think it's partly about how you learn. Actually, you know, if this is about learning theory, then theories of learning styles come in, and I think, you know, personality type comes in. You know, one person's group work is someone else's worst nightmare, having to discuss in a group your career thinking. For other people, you know, the extroverts, that's how they refine their career thinking, is by, you know, uttering it and talking it out and, you know, refining and shaping and sifting within a group. So just as I think that it's about individual preference and individual learning style, so I think there is something in career. I mean, actually, the idea that career learning has only ever taken place in formal settings is ridiculous. Career learning theory takes place when you hear, you know, I don't know, relatives talking about their jobs or lack of them, or indeed, you know, social media now. It's so easy and so prevalent and so kind of second nature for the digital natives. You know, I'm a digital immigrant, but, you know, we have wave upon wave of digital natives, you know, to ask out. You know, to ask out, what should I be wearing for this interview? What kind of questions will they ask me? You know, what do I need to do on my first day? And that's fabulous. I mean, that's really useful. But I think there's something about personalised services. I think there's something about individual styles, and I think there's something about mixed media. I think, you know, at various stages you'll want to use some media rather than other. I do think, interestingly, consistently, research shows that at some point people do want to sit down one-to-one and talk, and people do want some kind of face-to-face, person-to-person, in the moment, real-time, real interaction with an advisor, consultant, coach, whatever. And that, you know, we see that across all services. Why would career services be any different?
Okay, thank you very much.